are back in studio. I am with my co-host. You know him. You love him. Joe Quattrucci. How's it going, man?
Great. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's fun.
Looking forward to another phenomenal conversation with you about what we've been doing so far this year and what it's looking like for the rest of the year.
I think that we've kind of been, I don't know about you, it feels like I have a lot of plates spinning right now.
Sure.
They're all good.
Yeah.
Just kind of have me go in every different direction.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to, juggling a lot of balls all at the same time.
Yeah.
Managing different parts of their business, different businesses, their personal life. It can be a lot sometimes.
So maybe it would be fun to kind of reflect on the first quarter and maybe just dive into some of the things that you and I feel like we have learned or revisited or spent some time with. I mean, we're both coaching agents. We're both, growing various businesses. We've had the opportunity to speak at a bunch of different things and coach and train at different events.
Yeah.
And so I know we've picked up different concepts and ideas. So
Sure.
Maybe we'll just kind of share a smattering of the things.
Let's do it.
I mean, so what comes to mind first?
Well, just while you were saying that, the very first thing that came to mind was continuing your own personal growth journey. Whatever that means for you, depending on wherever you are in life and business. How are you continuously educating yourself on the next most important thing to learn?
Yeah, your business only grows to the extent that you do, and it's a phrase that we use a lot and have heard a lot. You and I were just talking a little bit off air. Like I was saying to you, man, I need to maybe double down on some of my personal development stuff myself.
Sure.
Because I do have so many things spinning right now. And I think even this conversation is good because it forces us to think and remember, even when we're not necessarily actively in the pursuit of personal development, it's occurring day by day.
Right.
And we should be reflecting on those things.
Yeah, 100%. And I do, I have sort of a simple process, whether I'm reading a book or listening to a podcast, whenever I come across something I really like, it could be a specific phrase or sentence or a key word. It could just be an idea that I paraphrase, and I just simply write it in one particular spot in my notes. And every so often, I'll just review those different concepts and sort of just keep them top of mind and see how they're showing up at that particular time in my life.
Yeah. Definitely. So, so far this year, we've been in Orlando together. You've traveled to some different places speaking. I had the opportunity to speak at a brokerage. There's a bunch of different topics, a bunch of things that we could go into. I kind of want to start with a conversation that you had at family reunion, with the Disney executive, and I know it made a big impact on you.
Yeah.
Give listeners kind of a context of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So we were at Orlando. We were at Disneyland, right, which was phenomenal. And
did you ride the teacups?
Is it Disney World or Disneyland?
Disney World.
Oh gosh,
Disney World.
I already got the story wrong. Shows you how closely I pay attention. Anyway, so we're at Disney World, and they have this executive come out and give the keynote speech. And it was a really interesting topic. First of all, really cool presentation. He used a flip chart that he had he drew a bunch of pictures. He was clearly an artist, very colorful pictures, and he basically just flipped the chart, and with every new picture was a new story or a new concept.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And I really think if I could summarize the whole purpose of his conversation was that as leaders, we have a certain responsibility to create a certain work environment, not only to retain the talented people in our world, but to get the best results from them so that we can follow through with the vision of our organization. And so what he talks about is how simple things, and David, people know these things. It's just a matter of whether or not they're applying them. So this is really just more of a refresher, a reminder. Simple things like, are you encouraging getting feedback from the people that work alongside you and work beneath you, so to speak, that you employ? Are you getting their feedback, or is it a one-way communication from you down to them? Or are you asking for that feedback? He talked a lot about the way that you get that trust and you get honest feedback is simply by, number one, obviously the way you communicate, but allowing space for laughter and fun and creativity in the workspace. Now, at first, I admittedly had some pushback on this idea because I'm a high D. I like to get right to it. Hey, let's stay focused on the goal. At the same time, throughout his presentation, he did some sort of live examples in the audience and proved how simply changing the way you respond to somebody's idea, for example, yes and versus no because. And even if you don't like the idea they're presenting, if you follow your answer with yes and, it creates a dialogue between the other person that then can evolve, versus the no because response is pretty much a dead end. And by allowing this sort of dialogue and allowing yourself to have some fun, it really allows your conscious brain to tap into all of its resources, because when you're under stress or anger or frustration, we sort of go into survival mode in our brains, and it turns off the conscious part of our brain that's designed for problem solving, and we go right into reactionary flight or fight mode.
So it has a benefit to both the superior in this context, and it also has a benefit to the person who's receiving that language, because I think that same visceral reaction can occur when you hear no, like the person tenses up, versus a yes and. That actually creates an environment where they're ready to listen and receive in a different way.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And even if the example is like you say, hey, Joe, we should start this event on this date and this time. And I, in my head, I'm thinking there's no way we're going to do that. Instead of saying no, because here's all the reasons, I would say, yes, David, we should absolutely do that. And let's consider this and this and this. So let's schedule it on this date, or let these 2 or 3 things happen before we schedule it. It totally changes the conversation. And like you're saying, the way that the person is receiving that information in return.
Yeah. When you first started sharing this story just now, like I thought about a conversation that I just had with a pretty successful agent around like, how do we set team goals in the context of individual goals, those producing on a real estate team. And he was sharing how he would typically share the team goal and then get the feedback of those that he's employing, so to speak, on the real estate team to figure out their goals. And I challenged him to, what if you receive those goals from the individuals first and use that to filter up to the team goal?
Right.
You don't even know, if you set your team goal first, if it's big enough to encompass. So you've already potentially built a business plan and a goal that doesn't necessarily even fit everyone in your world that's there, right?
Right.
And so just by flipping that, you can still get everything you want.
Mm-hmm.
But the team has now gotten the feedback, or been able to give feedback, so that they feel included. And that was just something that I thought about when you shared that first piece of that story.
Yeah, exactly. Because what type of engagement do you get from your employees when it's like, I'm the manager, this is what we're doing, this is the goal, go do your job? You get results where like 30% of America says I'm partially engaged in my work, and 40% are like, I'm disengaged at work. Well, as small business owners, we obviously don't want disengaged employees, because we're just spinning our wheels and wasting money. We want people to engage in the business, and I love what you're saying about take their personal goals and turn it into the team goal. It's reverse engineering, because people will want to take more ownership if it's including their desired outcome as part of the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. In that talk, did he share the Walt Disney like mind map? Or have you ever seen that?
The vision map.
Yeah. How Walt like had scratched together how all these different businesses and worlds like came together in the Walt Disney. Like that continues to be one of the most. I want that picture like blown up and framed on a wall, because I think it's cool for one, and two, it's really a principle of Stephen Covey of beginning with the end in mind, where Walt really like he could see it.
Right.
And now to look back, I mean, what? 50, I don't know if that was 50 years ago, 70 years ago.
Yeah, at least.
Whenever. And to see all that's come in the Walt Disney empire.
Well, that'd be a great exercise for any of our listeners to do for themselves, just creating a vision map. And what you would do is take your real estate business, for example, and put it right in the middle of a blank piece of paper, and then think about what are all the additional streams of revenue that either currently exist around this business or that could exist around this business. So for Disneyland, it was obviously, the movies. It was Disney World, Disneyland. It was merchandise and sales and online revenue. So all of these different revenue streams and all of these different business value adds, but there's obviously synergy between all of them. And so once you start creating the business map, you start looking for the synergy lines. For example, if I own a title company and a real estate team, well, obviously, organically, one feeds the other. And so that's the sort of synergy we want to be thinking about as we're designing our business map. How can I create 4, 5, 6 businesses that all feed each other?
Any other thoughts from that that you took away from that talk?
I would just say, don't underestimate the power of positive energy. And I know that that's sort of a cliche thing to say, but
It's where it all starts, though.
well, the people in our organizations are going to follow our lead, and if we're showing up grumpy and miserable and last minute reactive all the time, they're either going to get sick of that and step away, or be half engaged. And so we want to just be more intentional about the type of work environment we're creating, so that we can empower our employees to take on as much responsibility and help us get closer to that cause to the maximum extent possible. There's a big difference between leverage and delegation. And we've talked about that in the past.
Yes. Yep.
So create leverage, don't just delegate.
Definitely. Man, well, that sounds like a great experience. I think one of the things from the first quarter that I got to be involved in that actually, been looking back at some notes here. I got invited to speak to Harcourt's North America. Harcourt's is a great real estate company out there at their national conference, and the keynote speaker before I had the opportunity to take the stage was a lady by the name of Julia Gentry. And I had never heard of Julia before, but she's a motivational speaker. And she did this 2-part conversation on living convicted and really being, just owning your goal, right? The goal that you have. And she talked about a bunch of different things. And one of the things that she said that I highlighted and marked was the point of your goal is not the goal. It's who you become on the way to accomplishing that goal.
Yeah.
And I think we've maybe heard similar, that idea stated differently. But her point was, if you are not tied into your goal from a perspective of who you're becoming, then that's one of the primary reasons that you'll probably quit before you accomplish it. And so that was something that I was like, man, I've got to consider more, like, who do I want to become? Right. And we've talked before about, like, it's who we need in our world to accomplish something. Well, the very first who we need is us.
Right.
And understanding who we want to become. And not taking that for granted. So that was, an epic talk. And Julie's someone we probably should have on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great. That reminded me of something I've heard Gary Keller say, which is that happiness happens on the way to fulfillment. So I think the idea, my interpretation of that is, don't set goals that you think are going to make you happy. Set goals for your life that you think are going to make you fulfilled, and you'll find the happiness along the way. Chase fulfillment, and so, like, I think about, like, well, okay, what does that sound like? Well, we've talked about the human needs before, like the needs that we all sort of share as human beings. And growth and contribution are the two human needs that create the most amount of fulfillment. So if you feel like you're in a rut, you feel like you're stuck, you feel like you're, lacking fulfillment today, I would immediately say to you, for my first 2 suggestions, how can you be more intentional about growing? Like, what do you want to go learn? What do you want to go study? Go pick up a book or a podcast. Pour something positive into your brain that's helping you expand your thinking, and then go give something to somebody. And it doesn't even have to be money. It could be time. It could be, your effort. It could be a resource. Whatever you can give.
In fact, those things are probably more impactful.
Yeah, they really are. And so, oftentimes what people chase instead are things like significance, or certainty. I can speak to that for myself. I want to hit a certain financial goal in my life so that I can have a certain level of certainty around the way I raise my family and the way I pay my bills. And if I'm just focused on the certainty aspect, then I'm just focused on making money, and that could distract me from the contribution and the value I'm creating in my business. And so again, I go right back to happiness happens on the way to fulfillment. So set that big vision for your future based around that.
There's so much of Family Reunion in the keynote with Sean Achor. If any of you guys haven't read Sean's book, The Happiness Advantage, that's exactly the idea. And even the biological, wiring that supports that, the scientific data that supports what we just talked about, The Happiness Advantage by Sean. Yeah, it's about your character development. It's about being in alignment with who you want to become. And another piece of this conversation, she talked a lot about pressure and how pressure and trial is not there to break you. It's there, it has a purpose. And that purpose usually shows up later in life.
Yeah.
And so keeping the perspective that, hey, this trial, no matter how big or small it may be, it's not there to, break us and ruin us. It's there to prepare us for what's coming.
Right.
And I think that's such a that's an empowering concept.
Right.
So I don't have to look at what I'm facing today as something that's going to crush me.
Right.
I can look at it as, hey, I don't know what it is yet, but if I'm living in alignment with who I want to become, this is preparing me for something else I'm going to face in the future.
I love that. Human beings are incredibly resilient. And it's not until you go through some of those trials and tribulations that you actually realize you have it in you.
Yeah.
Right? But it's absolutely true.
Yeah, when your back's against the wall.
Yeah.
Right?
Mentally, emotionally, physically resilient and ever evolving, right? So I love that you mentioned that. And I always like to add this, David. I'm not one of these people that just thinks, as long as you think positively all the time, nothing bad's ever going to happen. That's not the case at all. It's not a matter of ignoring, the weeds in the gardening and pretending like they're not there. It's a matter of acknowledging those weeds and then making a plan to go rectify the situation. If you're having those negative thoughts, why is your brain presenting you with those thoughts? You need to either take a new action or change your perspective.
I'm so glad that you just used the word perspective, because that's exactly the word that I think it fits here, right? Yeah. It's not that bad things aren't going to happen. In fact, they are going to happen.
Right.
That's just the world we live in. What's our perspective going to be when we encounter those things?
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that, one quick note on this mindset piece is, as it pertains to perspective, the meanings that you assign to your experiences are what ultimately create your experiences. So if I always use a simple example. If you're on your way to vacation and you have a hard time at airport security, and then it ruins the next day or two of your vacation because all you're thinking about is that, TSA agent that didn't handle your baggage quickly enough, right? We can get stuck on the meaning of something, and we have to allow ourselves to acknowledge the thought and then allow it to just process out. All right, we can't always control the first thoughts that come into our head, but we can always control the second, right? Stephen Covey. And so we've got to be good at not dwelling on something, not giving a negative thought more energy than it deserves.
I think I'll share one more thing from this, because it was really, now that we're talking about it, and this is why I love reflecting, especially, with other people like you, Joe, because it starts to call to mind some of these things that maybe we should, have marinated on more in the first place. And in that same talk, Julia shared with us the difference between a preference and a conviction. And she said, a preference is something that under pressure will adjust or will modify. Conviction is my I can't not. My I can't not.
Right.
And so she challenged us to identify, what's your I can't not? And the example that she gave to really crystallize this was, have you ever seen that movie Hacksaw Ridge?
Yeah, sure.
Desmond Dawes?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so the whole idea, Desmond, the story of Hacksaw Ridge, he was, I don't even know what you call it. He couldn't bear an arm, a firearm, right? I don't know what you call that. He just had to abstain from having a firearm.
I think it was a religious thing, right? He didn't want.
I think it was a religious thing.
Yeah,
it was he nonviolence or whatever,
right,
pacifist, I guess. But he was under this extreme conviction to help his comrades, and so he actually enlists in the military, in the army, and he goes to war, but he will not carry a gun on the battlefield.
Right.
Instead, he enlists as a medic.
Right.
And so his job, as he saw it, was to not take life, but to go in and rescue life, right? And so people, in the movie, they give him a hard time, and they're berating him and making fun of him, and he's never going to make it through boot camp, and even his drill sergeants are giving him a hard time. And yet he gets it, and then we have this amazing story where he's in history now because he rescues more people on a battlefield than I think ever before.
Right.
I think I got those facts right. But at one point in the movie, when he's asked, he really this defines the difference between preference and conviction. He's challenged on carrying a firearm, and then even his wife says to him, Desmond, why don't you just do it?
Right.
And he says to her, I don't know what I would do with myself if I don't live true to myself. And I like, when I heard that line again, it was like, whew, chills. What is your I can't not? Like business, personal, all the things. Like we all have it.
Right.
And I just think that's something that we should all be thinking about.
Well, because we get the things that we can't not, right? Another way of saying that in a less tongue-tied way, we get the things that we must have for ourselves. We don't get what we want, right? I don't have the physical body that I want. I don't have the income that I want. I don't have the life that I want. I have the things that I must have, right? By nature, I'm going to go find the way to get my musts, not my wants or anything else.
Yeah,
It's sort of that concept, right?
There we go. That's much easier English.
Yeah. I can want $1 billion, but if I'm not willing to put in the work to get it because it's absolute necessity, then I'm never going to get it. So back to your saying, as it pertains, let's just say to your personal, to your business, have you turned those things that you really want into musts, into things that you can't not have for yourself, for your family? And I think the way that you create that energy in your body is to what I would call create leverage, which is what is it that you want to move away from? What is the exact opposite of what you want that would be so painful and so detrimental? And over the course of 5, 10, 15 years, it would just be a downward spiral. That would be the move away from energy. And then the actual move toward, what is it that I want to accomplish? And it goes right back to growth and fulfillment. What am I going to do once I get there? How am I going to help others? How am I going to get the most fulfillment out of this along the way? So it's geez, we got deep real fast.
Yeah, that's why I love these conversations.
These are good conversations.
All right. What else did you learn this quarter?
Oh gosh, let me go back to the notes.
Man, it is. It just like it reignites different things inside of yourself when we have these conversations. It's so good to reflect. Like if you haven't taken time to reflect, you've got to do that because it's almost like a celebration. It's like a mini celebration that we're doing right now, Joe, of the things that we've learned and grown so that we can then go give them to others. Right?
Right.
So, all right. What else did we learn?
That's a good question.
Maybe that's where we need to park.
Stay there a little longer.
I'm just saying maybe we just need to kind of land the plane. I don't know.
Okay.
Land the plane? I don't even know how long we've been recording.
Well, I don't either, but as soon as you said plane, that reminded me of gauges, which reminded me of checking your business numbers. So that's how I think.
We should.
So I know we've talked about this recently, but we're coming up at the end of the first quarter this Friday. And so check your gauges. Yeah. What are your business numbers?
Yep.
And if you're saying, Joe, what business numbers, then you're behind.
Right? Then you need to make sure you have gauges.
Then you need to go build some gauges.
Yeah.
Right? But the point here, David, is don't wait until the fourth quarter to say, where am I in relation to my annual goal? It's too late to make a corrective action. Every quarter, but even monthly, weekly, we should be asking ourselves, where am I in relation to my monthly goal, my quarterly goal, and what do I need to do to get back on track if I'm behind? What do I need to do to continue staying on track if I'm there? And if I'm ahead of pace, then either what is my new goal or what am I going to do with some extra time off at the end of this year?
Exactly.
Right? Go spend some time with the family on vacation, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So definitely you got to go check those gauges, close units, close volume. Listing appointments, listings taken, GCI, all those key performance indicators.
Business budget, personal budget.
Yeah.
This is something I'm getting better at every week, right? That's a fancy way of saying I'm not good at it, and it's becoming part of my routine, right? Getting organized in QuickBooks and actually being intentional about, okay, where is my money going? And then eventually working my way to, I think profit first, tell your money where to go, not ask where it went. And right now I'm still asking where it went.
Yep.
I'm looking back at historicals and saying, okay, where did I spend all this money?
Right.
And so this is for me, the starting point, getting organized, getting all my buckets created so I can then begin to have the conversation. How much money do I want to spend next quarter, next month? What percentage of that money am I going to allocate into different buckets? Marketing, technology, resources, salaries, et cetera. And just become more intentional as a business owner, even though it's sometimes feels like a distraction from what I'm actually trying to accomplish. Without money, without profit, none of it exists.
Yeah.
And so just slowing down enough to have that have that time.
Well, and there's that word again, intentional, and it comes up in so many of our conversations because nothing happens without intentionality around the thing. I mean, we do a book club at the brokerage every Friday, and even though we've read 3 different books to this point, it always has come back to intentionality.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to be more intentional about how I think about wealth, more intentional about how I make first impressions when I walk into a room, how I'm more intentional with tax strategies to create tax-free wealth.
Right.
Like it's always intentionality.
Well, and that just reminded me at FIMA Reunion, the Keller Williams Rookie of the Year this year, her name was Rachel Platt. $750,000 GCI her first 12 months in real estate.
Rachel Platt.
So I bring that up because as you're talking about intentionality, I get from new agents all the time, well, what's realistic? What's realistic? And I used to say Rookie of the Years at Keller Williams typically are making between $300,000 and $400,000 their first year in real estate. And there's several people in the company that do that their first year, every year consistently. Well, Rachel just set a new bar.
I'd say
an extremely impressive bar. And so I just come back to this because it's like, if you have the must, right? If you have the leverage as to why you must do something, and if you're intentional about the way you're going to go about it, and you're intentional about the way you spend your time and your energy, then you can create enormously successful businesses super fast.
Yeah, totally. Rachel should be on the podcast.
Oh, she's in my notes where she's getting an email today.
Perfect. I love it, man. Hey, I had a lot of fun with this conversation. I hope you guys, glean some valuable information. And, your action item then is to go out and reflect on your quarter as well. Check those gauges. Ask yourself what you learned that you can give to someone else. Because, hey, we do it to come from contribution, and what you and I know, Joe, is when we come from contribution, we always end up getting what we want. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, David, on that note, where can our listeners ping us if they want to either give us a suggestion for a guest to have on the show or a topic for us to discuss in deeper depth? Yeah, I'd say DM us on Instagram at the AI Podcast, or they can reach out directly to my assistant, Kashmir T at kw.com. That's KASHMIRT at kw.com. I think those are probably the 2 A's. Perfect. Would love to get some feedback on, again, guests and topics that you'd love to hear more of, what's been beneficial and valuable so far, and that way we can continue to add, the most value possible in this show. Awesome. Guys, this has been another episode of the All In Podcast. As always, go play All In. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play All In.